What if everything you've ever been taught about marketing was actually holding you back? Maybe even some of the things that I taught you. But today's guest spent years following all the quote unquote right tactics and strategies, only to end up with nothing. But here's what nobody's actually talking about: how, when you strip away those tactics and strategies, lead you and ultimately led her to build something far more powerful. Welcome back to the Mind of George show. This is a show where entrepreneurs discover that true scaling isn't about hacks or tactics. How it's fitting with today's interview: it's about aligning your mindset, your message, and marketing create sustainable growth that feels authentic and aligned to who you are. I hope you cut through the noise to help you build a business that matters and make money doing it. And in today's episode with my incredible guest, we get real about why most marketing tactics get nowhere and what's missing underneath them, how you build authentic connection in a very quote unquote fake world, the power of being exactly who you are, and how you can market through your values or through your faith and still be successful as a business owner. Because here's what we have to remember: our greatest strength isn't copying other strategies, it's in being courageously, authentically us. And today, with my incredible guest who I love dearly, we're going to break down how to build a business that reflects your true calling. So we get into the weeds. We talk about her story from producer to successful business owner, to building it, to walking away, to rebuilding it, and so much more. And so if you are tired of getting burnt out and exhausted by following strategies that don't feel like you, or you're resistant to them because you can't be consistent because they feel inauthentic, or if you want to build genuine connection with your audience, or you're ready to align your marketing with your values or your faith, this episode is 100% for you. And so without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George show. Today just feels like a special episode because I don't know how else to label today's guest except she's my sister from another mister who I've never hugged in person yet. But that will change eventually when God brings us together. But I've had the absolute honor and pleasure of getting to know today's guest over the last year and beyond. I've been on her podcast. We've stayed in contact. We've realized the amount of mutual friends that we have, which just kind of blows my mind. But she is just a powerhouse. She is a former TV producer, a marketing coach. She helps 6- and 7-figure coaches and business owners transform their business online through the power of video. It's mind-blowing to me when I hear her speak. And this is going to be one of those podcasts where I'm just nodding my head very, very aggressively. If you're watching this, if you're listening, you're saved from that experience. But when she speaks, I shut up, I listen. And she has just been on this path, this war path of growth and love and values and everything that we stand for on this podcast, and bringing it into the business world. And so she is just a vessel of knowledge, and I am honored, I am excited, and eternally grateful for this incredible woman to be here. So Shamara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, brother. I am so grateful to be here. I'm happy that we get to have this conversation. I'm looking forward to jumping right in.
Yeah. And I have to start here for everybody listening, because she said something to me right before we hit record. And I'm like, that is 100% what we're starting with. And she's like, you know what I really want to talk about? I want to talk about all these marketing tactics and strategies that everybody taught me and I had for years, and I used them and ended up with nothing. And I was like, let's start there. So why don't you start unpacking that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I actually I joined the coaching program because my goal was to scale my business. I said, oh, okay, we were already doing good. I already had my own strategy, but I noticed that the algorithm was shifting. It was impacting my strategy. And so I joined the coaching program just so that I can learn some new strategies. And I started implementing it, not just from this person. I've worked with other people as well. I started implementing it from running Facebook ads to doing cold DMs to switching up how I'm reaching out to my audience, to hiring VAs in other countries to help to have these conversations. You name it, I did it. And none of it worked. Absolutely none of it worked. I got to a point where you're probably doing it for about 6 to 9 months. And I probably brought in 1 or 2 leads. None of them converted. And then finally, I felt like King David, right before he became king, when he was battling Goliath, and he goes to Saul and he's getting ready to battle Goliath, and Saul puts all this armor on him, right? Like, oh, you can't battle like that. You have to battle with my things on. So that's how I felt. And when I got to this knowing where I'm like, none of this is working, I had to take it all off. I took it all off and I stripped down to the bare bones and went back to what I was doing. But I'm gonna tell you right now, even when I went back to what I was doing, it wasn't working the same way as before, right? And that's only because God had given me a prophetic word for my business. He told me that things were going to shift. And because of that, my marketing also shifted. And so for me, I've gotten to the point that now I understand there are a lot of marketing tactics out there, but you want to do the thing that actually works for you, that you're in alignment with. And that's what I had to do. I was doing everything that went against how God created me, how I attract people, who I speak to. And when I got rid of all of those things, then I got to come back into alignment with me. And I saw the strategy that God gave me. The strategy He gave me only amplified who I am. So the original strategy that I would do is I would go live for my audience. I would teach them. I would build relationship. And from there, they would join my 5-day challenge, convert content to cash. And then from there, they'll join my academy. When the algorithm started shifting, then the strategy wasn't working the same. I was getting less people joining my lives. So then I started implementing cold DMs. I started running Facebook ads. That was the worst experience I ever had in my life. I would never, ever run Facebook ads again. I know some people, they have like great experiences with it, but for me, like, I did not have a good experience. I was probably paying like $1,800 a month. That included paying the person to run the ads for me. And ask me how much money we made. Yeah.
How much did you make?
We probably made 300, and I'm probably being generous. I
Mm,
made more money just from organic marketing from ever that other than running ads. Like everything, building my business to where it is now, all from organic marketing. But when I decided to pay for it, like we brought in all these people that I remember one month we probably had like 40 leads in one month that I was like, "Oh my goodness, we're ready for this." And not one of those people bought. Not one of them bought. Started doing cold DMs. I'm paying people in other countries to do the DMs for me. We're changing the script. We brought in maybe one person. It was like all this extra effort for nothing to convert. And then when I went back to, okay, I'm just going live, the strategy that God gave me was to host a podcast. The podcast makes sense because it's actually an extension of my live videos. Instead of just me talking, now I get to have conversations with wonderful people like you and other people where they're building up their business. And because of that, we get to bypass the algorithm because now we're still leveraging each other's audiences, right? So it was genius, but when God gave it to me, I didn't want to do it.
mhm.
Such a dark place in my life from nothing working. My one goal last year was to scale the business. And because nothing worked, we didn't scale the business. So when God said, start your podcast, I was crying every day. I was like, Lord, I don't want to do this. But I'm happy that I surrendered because I started to see like, one, it's like my podcast brought me back to life because it breathed life into me with everyone that I met. And then two, it started opening doors for me. And I would have never thought that because after trying all these strategies and nothing working, I'm thinking to myself, man, nothing else is going to work here. And it wasn't the case. It actually did work.
I could run this entire podcast by just unpacking the last 4 minutes. And I want to summarize some of it, but I also want to highlight a few things because what you just explained is probably 9 out of the 10 conversations I have with people every day, where somebody told me to do it this way. Somebody told me I had to do it this way. I have to DM this way. I have to close this way. This is what I have to say in my videos. This is blank. And it's really powerful. And by the way, the analogy, because I remember with King David, and because I watched House of David, visually seeing it as well in that moment of this little boy being put on with this king's armor and not being able to move. These shackles are the things that we create that hold us back, and then we start to burn out and we start to get overwhelmed. And one of the things that I've said for years, and this is an Alex Sharfin quote, is that my summarized version is like, you can't scale your business till you can scale yourself first, but it has to be yours and it has to be you and it has to be an expression of self. And I want to ask you about alignment in a minute, but I want to make a note on the paid media part as well, because paid media is something I've consulted on, I advise on, I help companies with. But you nailed so many points that I think entrepreneurs, especially in the 5-6 figure range, bump into all the time, where paid media should only be lighter fluid for organic or earned media that's already working.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because even if we took the world and the state of the world off the table right now, which there's an entire another conversation of how much people need to be in a buying cycle to trust and to be connected because of what's happened. Paid media is like taking your business and going and standing in Central Park in New York or Times Square and being like, hey, hire me, hire me,
Mhm,
hire me,
mhm,
hire me.
mhm.
And it does so much more damage than good because there is no experience or ecosystem for somebody to build a relationship with you or to go through
Exactly.
what's actually required to create connection to feel safe enough to invest. And so I love that you said all that. Ditto. Huge. And by the way, because you said it, this podcast was born out of the same experience that you had back in 2020 when COVID happened and I quote unquote lost everything
Mhm.
and a couple $100,000 a month in revenue. And I hiked every day until I found clarity and ended up sitting on a mountain. And God's like, why have you had a podcast microphone in your closet for 8 years? And my question back was the grand idea to generate revenue is to launch a podcast from the ground up. And at this time, I didn't have social media or a website. I had been off the internet for 4 years. And that's where this podcast was born. So, ditto on that one. And so, I want to ask you about alignment because it's a word I use a lot
Mhm.
and I talk about it, but everybody has a different definition of it. And I think it's so important because you alluded to it in the this doesn't feel like me.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that led to like burnout and frustration and like you almost start to like resent the path that you love so much and it doesn't make sense. So, what does alignment really mean for you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And before I answer that, I just want to confirm what you said. That's exactly how I felt. I was burnt out. I told God, I was in such a dark place. This was like 6 weeks of just darkness. And I remember telling God, I don't want to serve anymore. I don't want to serve your people anymore. I don't want to be a CEO anymore. I had a team at the time, and it felt like I was managing the team and doing their work for them. Like I was just in such a dark place. It was horrible. And it wasn't until I came out of that dark place that I understood that I just wasn't in alignment. And so alignment for me is being one with myself and being one with God. Like that's what alignment is for me. And let me tell you, the strategies, some of those strategies that I worked, some of them were the things that God told me to do. And I don't think a lot of us realize this that when God gives us a strategy, sometimes we expect it to work in 3 months, 6 months, but it's not a 3 month, 6 month. No, it's a long term strategy. And also some of it he gives us to build our character. Like one of the strategies God gave me was to change the pricing for my challenge, make the general admissions free, and then lower VIP to 147. Not only did we make less money, but I was so frustrated. Like God, we're bringing in people to this challenge, we're making less money. But after that year of doing that, what I learned was what I believed was true. Like I was listening to someone else who was telling me like, "No, people will come if it's free." And God was like, "All right, try it." So I tried it. Guess what? People didn't come because it was free. People don't care about that. At least my audience doesn't. My audience, they're premium buyers. They see free on something, they're automatically going to think it's cheap. So that's exactly what happened. People did not come because it was free. So I went and changed my prices back, and the challenge people it started filling up again at the right price. And sometimes we go through these things because God wants to build our character, but I wouldn't have gotten that lesson if I didn't come back into alignment. And so part of that alignment, being one with self, being one with God, is also standing on peace. Like my foundation is peace. Like when we put on the full armor of God, right? It says, shod your feet in the gospel of peace. And that time when I was in this darkness, I realized that I didn't have any peace. I was making decisions from a space of chaos. I was making decisions from a space of lack and scarcity. And when you're making decisions from there, you're not going to get the fruit that you expect, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when I got out of that, I let go of everything that everyone was telling me to do, and I just got back into alignment. I just said, you know what? I'm going to go back to going live. I'm going to continue to do my podcast, and then God, you lead me from there. And He's been leading me ever since. And the crazy thing is, it's not crazy. It's typical. When you're walking with God, we can never see the full path, right? So I always just tell people it's not crazy. It's typical. This happens every day in the kingdom. Um, to everyone else, my strategies look like they're not working. But I shared this with you before we got on the podcast. But last June, God told me I was going to go through a famine. And that's where I was for the last year. So the strategies that God has been setting me up on, it did open doors. It didn't significantly change my business yet, but then just recently he told me the famine was over. And so sometimes even when we're building our business, we have to understand, especially if you're building it with God, that's the most important thing, right? God, he cares about the business, but not as much as he cares about the person. And it's who
Mm.
we're becoming when we're building this business because of the impact that we're going to make, right? Like now I can walk people through what happens when you're going through a famine, how to prepare for the famine, what strategies you want to do when you're in the famine, and how to trust God during that famine.
That's so good. So good. This is your podcast, not mine, because I'm like, same, same, same. Here's another story. Here's another story. But I'm gonna like make this the Shamara Star Show as it belongs. I want to give some texture to what you said about being one with yourself,
Mhm.
right? Because I hear that. And I think that can mean something different for so many different people. But what I see often, and I have one client in mind right now who I'm coaching, who I love, but she went through this and she basically was gaslit by every other coach of like, you have to do it my way or this way or that way. And people end up losing their identity in that process because they end up taking on the identity of the business.
Mhm.
And so I'm just really curious, like how you would define or what that means for you, for everybody listening of like, I love the being one with God, because that's the next question. But the first one is like, what does it really mean for you? And you coached similar people to I coach of like really being one with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really good, right? Being one with myself is really listening to myself and what it is that, okay, so let me take it back a little bit. It's not just listening to myself, it's understanding who God created me to be and designed me to be. Out of my
Mm.
design, the way that I attract people is when I'm speaking, is when I'm live, is when I'm building relationships. Like God already told me that my words will transform lives because when I speak, they're going to hear Him in my speech. So, me switching to Facebook ads didn't make any sense because when were they going to hear
Or cold DMs.
right, or cold DMs, like, when were they gonna hear me speak, right? And through the Facebook ads, right, we were putting out content, but again, it was something that you said earlier, which was like, just a high touch point wasn't there. And I kept saying that. I'm like, the difference between organic and the ads is that when it's organic, I can put out the short form content, and then from there, they can join me for a 1 hour live where I'm actually talking to you. I'm calling out your name and I'm helping you right there in the moment. Facebook ads don't allow me to do that. It's always going to
Mm-hmm.
be pre recorded, right? And so when I understood, when I was coming back into alignment, I really had to listen. Who did God design me to be? And what are my gifts? Because whatever my gifts are, that's what's going to be my marketing strategy. So me doing cold DMs, I mean, maybe ads may work a little bit later, but it would have to shift, right? Me hiring people in another country who doesn't understand English, it doesn't make sense, right? And so when I started to do that, I understood that podcast was the next strategy because this is just another extension of myself, me being able to speak in this capacity. But you can't get there unless you know who you are. And oftentimes
Mm-hmm.
people are starting businesses because they want to build wealth, but they don't realize their trauma is going to come up, pain is going to come up, and you have to be able to know who you are in order to heal from that. Some people, the first sign of trial, they go running. They no longer have a business, right? And so God was like to me, you can keep going and lack in scarcity, or you can just stand in who you are. And when I stood firmly in who I was, I understood this is the marketing that I need to do. And so now when I'm working with a coach, the strategy that they give me, if it's not in alignment, I'm just going to put it to the side. And that's okay. And
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing, it's not that the strategies don't work. They work, but they work based on who you are and how you attract your people. Like when I look at Jesus, right? And I like teaching Bible marketing secrets. So when I look at Jesus, look at how he attracted his people. He went town to town. He positioned himself in one place. And when he spoke, there he goes again. He didn't write messages to his people. He spoke to his people. His messaging that came out of his mouth is what attracted the people. And then he took time with his people. He taught them. He told parables. He shared stories with them, right? Then he gave them a call. Oh, I shouldn't even say to give a call to action yet, because actually he helped them get quick wins. Those were the miracles and the healings. And then from there, he gave them the call to action. There was a lot of this giving of himself. And I felt like the marketing that I was shifting into was to get me out of giving of myself. Because, oh, you want to make more money, you got to make more room. So you got to put this person in place and put this has to replace you and this has to. And it's like when Jesus replaced himself, he replaced himself with people. He built up disciples so that they will have the same messaging as him based on their personality. They attracted certain types of people. Like if we look at Paul and Peter, Paul was a very educated person. He was called to a certain group of people. Peter was not that educated. He was called to a certain group of people, but it still was the same. We're speaking, we're teaching, we're performing miracles, we're giving of ourselves. And so when I realized, like in my business, I stopped giving of myself, I had to go back. And I looked at all the holes in my business. I wasn't there. I tried to replace me with this,
Mhm.
that didn't work because you can't build relationship unless people know you. You can't build relationship unless people see you, right? And like I see people doing faceless content. I'm not saying faceless content is wrong or anything, right? But I get people who come to me where they want to do faceless content because they're afraid to show themselves. And I'm like, the easiest way to build a relationship is to show your beautiful face, right? And
Yeah.
so oftentimes we're trying to build a business. Let me not say oftentimes. Some people are teaching that you can build a business without relationship. And it is just not true. It is not ever going to work because people need relationship in order for them to trust you, in order for them to feel seen and heard, and in order for them to want to work with you. And when I understood
Mhm.
that, I went back to every hole and I said, I'm going to start having my own conversations. I'm going to show up. I'm going to make sure I talk to this person. Everyone who fell by the wayside, because we had a lot of people who fell by the wayside because team members just wasn't doing their job. We've had people who they paid for stuff, they got it, but they didn't get to finish it. And I'm like, there was no follow up. So I just went and I fixed all of that. And I made sure, you know what, the next time I build a team, I'm going to make sure I build me some disciples who can be an extension of myself so that we continue to build that relationship.
I love that. And I think one of the big takeaways out of that is playing to your strengths and not your trauma.
Exactly.
But your strengths is all of us have these natural proclivities. Like I have clients of mine that in their free time, if they're not in business, they're writing.
Mhm.
So I'm like, you are one of those skill sets where like you have the gift of writing to people. You see me with my friends on the weekend, I'm speaking and I'm like, hey, what about this? And what about this? And what about this?
Mhm.
And then I love that call out of like playing to your strengths. And one of the and by the way, that whole last section is basically a summary of my 15-year career
Yes.
broken down in 5 minutes. So what she said is what I believe and what I help you all do. But you said it so eloquently. And I want to make a point about it because I've talked about this on the podcast a ton. And I tell everybody that scaling comes from subtraction and not addition. And what I mean by that is all too often people are taught, not on this podcast, but people are taught that to scale, you remove yourself from the things that were working in the first place. But the truth is that you need to subtract the things that were preventing you from being in relationship to allow more of you to be in a relationship. And even when I help clients with team and they're hiring, I'm like, I don't care about their skills. I want to hire based on values and personality, to your disciples point, because then it's their unique approach to protecting that value, not I can check a number, I can send a DM, I can do it. That's how you replicate the mission. And I love the biblical analogy of disciples because I like listen and remember when they were put out to go preach for the first time. And it's like, I'm failing. And how do I say this? And it's like, no, it's your story. It's your way, but just protecting these principles, which is such a valid point. And even for people listening to this that don't have a giant team yet, or maybe you don't have a team at all, those same principles are the ones that you will pass on, but it's not done in logic and tasks and to-dos. It's done in playing to your strengths and then doubling down on them. But what you're going to hear, and I'm saying this for everybody listening, you're going to hear a whole lot of people tell you it doesn't work that way. You can't make it work that way. That model's not scalable. This won't happen. This won't happen.
Mhm.
And to that, I say, shush.
Mhm.
Because to Shamara's point, and one that I've walked through a ton, is I'm not trying to build the entire vision in a day. I'm going brick by brick. And as you go through these seasons, there might be a time where you go from me only running masterminds
Mm-hmm.
to thinking that was the way to scale to then being asked one too many times to do one-on-one coaching. And that's all I do now.
Yep.
And it's what brings me joy
Mm-hmm.
and holds me accountable as well, with standing calls in my calendar where I like can't hide or get off the field of speaking or facilitating. And I think for everybody listening, to your previous point from a previous question, is the timeline
Mm-hmm.
is not something we control, but we control the inputs and our obedience and walking it and playing to our strengths, and then allowing them to go. And just anecdotally, because I'm going to ask you about, being one with God. But when I wrote my cookbook, which was 11 years ago, I told the publisher what my plan was. And he said, I will not support that. That will not work. And it was on and this is before I was saved, but it was all God, because it was just this idea that hit me. And I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Well, I did it. And it was 9 months of work before the book published. And I'll never forget, on June 17th of 2014, my publisher called and said, I had a broken leg. I was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And he's like, I don't know how the heck you did it, but you made the New York Times list. And I was like, and he's like, take a picture. It's not going to happen again, but document all of this. And then he called me a week later and he's like, I don't know how you did it. You moved up 3 spots. He had to make that phone call 22 weeks in a row. And it got worse and worse and worse for him and better for me. But the way that I promoted that book, everyone said it wouldn't work. I shouldn't do it. And here's the premise.
Mm-hmm.
I gave away over half the book. And they're like, you can only give away 5 recipes. I'm like, no, I want to give more. And I want to give the best ones,
Mm-hmm.
because I want somebody to cook them and then realize they have a desire to have the rest of the book.
Yes.
And for everybody listening, you've heard me talk about this on the podcast. The book, The Go-Giver, is How I Live My Life by Bob Berg. And Shamara hit that point so well in the biblical example, but also in the relationship example, because I believe, and everyone knows this, relationships beat algorithms, but we're asking people to invest
Mm-hmm.
in their dreams or overcoming their fears or changing something in their life. And none of us would take out our credit card for a stranger or somebody that made us feel unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And none of us want to be cold DM'd or transacted upon. And so you have to understand that in the nature of business, if you want to build an ethical business, one that is based on values, and the way that I say it, one that when you put your head on the pillow at night, you can fall asleep soundly because you don't have that icky feeling in your soul. You have to be willing to play to your strengths and build relationships. And I love the way that you shared all of that. So now I want to ask about your being one with God. And I'm asking this one personally because I love you and I ask you to pray for me all the time, and we stay connected. But I think it's really, really important, because you shared some things with me before the show, and even in talking about it right now, where things that I struggle with, and people listening. And by the way, if you are not saved and secular, this applies to you as well, because you have big visions, right? My vision comes from God. My friend Stacy and I joke that God's the visionary and we're just the integrators. And my biggest struggle is walking where he tells me to walk, right? But there's this faith that's required in either side. And by the way, I would submit that it takes more faith not to believe than it does to believe, but that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah.
There's this faith that's required, that we're building something that has never been built before. We're accomplishing something that has never been accomplished before, which means it requires new action and obedience and consistency in that action. And how you summarized knowing who you were created in God's image, and then making sure that you're operating in alignment with your strengths.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm curious as to how you ensure what your day looks like, or what your perspective is about making sure that you are one with God in that process.
Oh, that's such a good question. So, when we get saved, right, when we accept Jesus Christ as our personal Lord and Savior, one of the first things that happens, whether you recognize it or not, is that Holy Spirit comes to live within you, right? And so, understanding that lets me know that God is living within me. So, we're already one. Now, the question is, how do I activate that oneness, right? And so, for me to activate it, I know people say, have business meetings with God. Yeah, you could do that too. But I honestly just like to acknowledge that he's there. And so I call this like me regulating my nervous system. And honestly, it really is just me remembering who God is, not just what he's done, but who he is, right? Like he's a lover, he's a giver, my provider, right? Sometimes I get visions of him parting the Red Sea, him being with the Israelites in the wilderness. And then how does that apply to me? You know, every time that he's shown up for me when I have cried, he has comforted me. So, really having these memories of God, or I should say with God, because we're both doing it. Because I start remembering, then he starts sending memories, and I'm like, yeah, that was such a good one, God. So, I do that every morning. That's how I could be one with, right? And this is important to me because I want to always hear God speak. I'm one of those people where I can hear God speak all day, every day. And so I teach people how to hear God speak all day, every day. I know there are some people who are like, God doesn't talk all day. That is not true. He does, right? You're the one who keeps tapping in and tapping out. Also, just because you ask him a question and he doesn't answer that specific question, you start thinking he's not speaking, but he may be talking about something totally different, right? And so being open to let him show me things and just speak to me. And so he does that. And so now that I'm one with him, right? My memories are connecting me with him. I'm like, you are very much there. I can ask him what I want to do. I can ask him what should I do next. I can also ask myself, like, what is it that I want to do? Because I've recognized that now that I'm one with God, I have his voice, I have his thoughts, I have his mind, right? So I can make decisions like God because he's trained me to do this, right? But oftentimes God has already given me the plan. And so that's the plan that, yeah, this, I'm not going to front like he didn't give me the plan 3 months ago. So that's the plan that I'm working. I'm working the plan that he's given me 3 months ago and, or even 2 months ago. And what's happening is me being one with him reminds me that although I don't see anything yet, keep going because times and seasons belong to God. And one thing last year, I didn't talk about this, but last year, in addition to none of the marketing tactics working, all of my beliefs were broken just in that 1 year. I grew up believing that if you work hard, you become wealthy. I grew up believing that if you do all the right things and you go to college, you'll get your dream job and you'll be able to, live the life that you want to live. And I had been doing that for the last 37 years and none of that was working, right? I had other beliefs. And it was in that 1 year that God broke all of my beliefs. It's like he just kept showing me, well, that doesn't work. That's not working. That's not working. That's not working. And I got to a point that I said, well, now that I no longer believe anything, what do you want me to believe, God? Because I went through a season where maybe for a good 2 weeks, I had no beliefs. I mean, none whatsoever. If you asked me what I believe, I was just like, I have no idea what I believe because he broke every single one of those beliefs. And then what he started to do, he started to show me, like, here's the truth, to rebuild, not rebuild, to give me new beliefs. And so, one thing that I started to believe about timing is that one, time and seasons belong to God. But the other thing is that he operates on like a farmer season, like a farmer time frame. If you like, I think that's the best way to explain it, where we go through seasons of planting and when you, or sowing, I should say, you go through seasons of sowing. And when you're sowing, it's not harvest season. So you're not reaping anything. When you're sowing, you can't see what's happening under the ground. You are literally nurturing, watering, making sure it gets sunlight. You're doing all of that work and you have no idea what's happening underground. That is the toughest space to be in with God. Because when I tell you the work that I'm doing, I'm like, Lord, this is a lot of work. And I have no idea if it's working. But that's where trust and faith comes in because I'm not
Mhm.
trusting in that system, right? I'm trusting in God who created the system. And so that being one with him is a constant reminder. I'm working. I'm working. Not me, Star. Holy Spirit's working. Holy Spirit's working. He can see what's happening underground. I can't. So he can see every time you go live, you're nurturing these hearts. It don't look like it, but you're nurturing these hearts. Every time you have a conversation with someone, they're picking up something new. It doesn't look like it to me because my bank account looked like something else, but God's like, it's okay. It's okay. And I'm helping it to stick. Right. So there's a scripture that says, like, we do the planting, God does the watering, and he does the harvest. And that's what I had to learn. And then after the sowing season, it's that nurturing, of course, and after the nurturing season, that's when you start to see things growing, right? It's still not harvest yet. That's the interesting part. Like, it's like 3 seasons go by before you can get to harvest. So now I'm just
Mm.
watching these things grow. I'm like, oh, okay, this person's getting closer to me. This person's understanding what I do. This person's seeing how I can help them. I'm getting more sales calls. Okay, I'm getting more of this, getting more of this. And then comes harvest season, where everything just hits you like an overload. And everything that you've put in, all the seeds that you've sown now, you start to reap. But I couldn't have gotten there until I became one with God and I started to understand his times and his seasons. And though I still struggle with it, because I can't act like, oh, I just know, because I don't be knowing. I still struggle with it. But what I don't struggle with is trusting God. And I used to struggle
Mm.
with that a lot, but now I don't.
Well, I've talked about this in the podcast before because Matthew McConaughey wrote a book called Green Lights. And so for anybody of faith or not of faith, what I loved in that book was his description of delayed gratification. And he's like, the only reason I've ever won an award for a movie is because the moment it's done, I have to wait a year to figure it out anyway. So I'm on to the next movie, like fully present, fully to the process and what's there. And I want to call this out from a strategy perspective in business, because you said this earlier, and I've talked about this on this podcast, but when it comes to people scaling or wanting to scale or make more revenue or have a bigger impact, what we typically find, and you alluded to this, is that in the process, once that seed was sowed, we stopped doing some of the behaviors that was nurturing or creating that seed. And when harvest comes, there's nothing there, but that's because we thought there was a finish line.
Yep.
And so it's a really, really important distinction that I love when you're talking about, like, I'm still going live, I'm getting on sales calls. There's this, you don't get abs overnight by going to the gym once, right? Like, if you want to see that six pack in the mirror, it's the gym, your sleep, movement, and food. But you have to believe it and have faith in it and be committed to the process if you ever want to see the result. And then the moment that you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, I have them, and you slip on the behaviors, you lose them. Which, to tie this together to what you said earlier, is so important to know who you are. And then in my world, in your world, who you are through God and how he's speaking, to make sure that you're building the right abs or that you're planting the right seed, and that when harvest comes, you actually want the fruit, and it isn't something that was somebody else's. Like, oh, I have this big bank account now and I'm miserable and depressed. Or I've had clients who thought they wanted a team of 40 and then ended up being like, nope, I don't. But then they have that responsibility and that weight because somebody else told them to do it that way, or said that's the only way you can do it. And so to tie that together, the way that you analogized that sowing in the garden is amazing to me. And as you were talking about it, you said one thing, and I don't even have a question, but I'm going to say this, and I want your thoughts on this. You were talking about God's timeline, and you're like, God, I want this now, and he doesn't answer it quickly. And I was sitting in reflection the other day, and I maybe heard it in passing or something, and I was like, I can't even imagine what my life would look like if God answered every one of my silly prayers that I asked for. Like, I would be a walking comedic show of these little micro moments as I lost perspective of these silly things that I asked for, and my life would be a disaster.
Yep.
And I was just reflecting on it the other day, because what it really does is that faith part and that delayed gratification part brings purpose. Like, there's purpose to us working, there's purpose to us providing value, there's purpose to us spreading the kingdom, building and nurturing relationships. And one of the things I say to people all the time is everybody's trying to monetize the wrong thing, because everybody's chasing revenue. But when you, quote unquote, because it relates to the metaphor, monetize relationships, it is a win-win game. And it just so happens that sometimes on the other side of that is revenue, but it's at the byproduct of a successful relationship. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that. And I also want to ask you too, because I feel like you and I are in identical races, and I love it, which is so nice. And I'm like, oh, that's my sister. You talked about God erasing all of these old beliefs, right? And I went through, and I'm still in that process. What are some of the other new beliefs that you've picked up in relationship to business, in relationship to marketing, in relationship to like the things you help yourself and help your clients with? Like, I would love to hear.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I had a question for God last year, I think it was. I was seeing so much success in my business, and I said to God, um, at what point do we're just at what point is it just me and you're not like part of it? Not that I was trying to get rid of him. I wasn't. I just recognized that the success came from him. And I wanted to know at what point will it start feeling like it's me that's doing it, right? I also feel like that's the reason why I went through what I went through last year. Because I was like, well, let me just give you the answer. And so now a belief that I have or that was strengthened for me is that like God is really the one who's setting the increase. Like these systems that we're doing, all the work that we're putting in. I mean, these are principles, right? Those who sow
Mm.
sparingly shall reap sparingly. Those who sow generously shall reap generously. You reap what you sow. Like these are actually principles that does happen, right? But I recognize like when it comes to the increase and the overflow and the abundance, only God can give that to you. Like that's just how it is. Because I went through a season of sowing, 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 and not reaping. And I recognize like, okay, he's really just using me to do the work, but he's the one who's setting the increase. So that was a belief that I ended up walking away with. I did something similar to you, which was I also thanked God for not giving me everything in that season. I mean, during the time when I'm going through it, I'm a brat. Why aren't you? You gave this to that person. They don't even follow you the way that I follow you. And it's okay to feel that way. God will tell me,
Yep.
like, it's okay that you feel that way, right? This is something that people have been telling me, and I feel like I'm finally starting to grasp it. But how big the mantle is on your life, it's going to show what your process is going to be like. Like with King David, he was on the run for over 10 years from King Saul. And yeah, from King Saul. And it was because he was going to be king of Israel and Judah. But if he was not going to be king, that probably wasn't going to be his process. His process probably would have been battle Goliath and that's it. But he had to go through that process because God was trusting him with such a big mantle, such a big mission, right? And so I feel like it took forever for God to like get this into me. The reason why you're waiting is because what's on the other side. And it's not only about fumbling the bag and all of that. It really is the testimony that comes out of it. Like the people that we're going to touch and understanding that like what I went through, it wasn't to punish me. It really was so I can be a blessing to others. Because who wants to work with someone who went through nothing? I don't.
Yeah.
I remember working as a television producer and I saw this guy and he was like a SVP of something. And I asked him if I could interview him and on his process because I want to know how he was able to do it. And I asked him one question, like, what did you have to do to get here? He was just like, oh, yeah, I just made one phone call and, here I am. You just made one phone call and here you are. He had nothing to offer me. And sometimes people are getting too so high on these platforms and have nothing to offer. And the difference between, some people who are doing that and who God has chosen is that God wants you to have something to offer. So I started to understand that and I started to cherish my journey. But here's the other thing that I believe. It's okay to be mad at God. I've always believed that. It just it just got even stronger. But it's okay to be mad at God. I think sometimes people are afraid. Oh my goodness, if I'm mad at him, he's going to smite me. He's a loving God. He's not going to do that. He actually knows that we're already mad. So you trying to hide it doesn't make any sense. Like King David said, where can I go to get away from you?
Yep.
And he was like, nowhere. I can't go. Like he's lived within us. So what happened for me was I really started to understand me and God. It's just me and you, Lord. Like, yes, he'll put other people in my life, but I can stand firmly on our relationship. It's just me and you, God, because of everything that I have gone through. Yes, the testing
Mm.
was hard, the trials was hard, but I really feel like what God wanted me to understand in this season, it's just me and him. I went through a
Mm.
process when I first started my business and came to the same conclusion. It's just me and him. But what I realized, how people say things like new level, new devil?
Yep.
I don't believe that at all. I believe new level, deeper devil, because you're battling the same stuff that you were battling 5 years ago. You just went deeper in the thing that you're battling.
Yep.
And so,
Yeah.
and for me to get the fruit that I'm getting is just growing even bigger. So the things that I went through,
Mhm.
walking out with this one belief, it's just me and you, God. I already know in 5 to 10 years, I'm probably going to go through something else again and walk away with the same belief even deeper. It's just me and you, God. Like, those are some of the
It
beliefs
rem-
that I walked away with.
I love it. It reminds me, I say it on the podcast all the time. Mastery comes from same reps, different depth.
There you go.
right? And the character that comes, right? And for me, this season has been like 1 James, like, brethren, count it all joy.
Yes.
And that's been the part of my heart, like, not mad at God, but resentful to other things and other places where I am like, I don't want to be in this, or is there a finish line to this? And then I was very abruptly reminded one day in prayer, is like, I mean, if you want the finish line, you can join me in heaven for eternity. But as of right now, you're on the field.
That part.
And I'm pretty sure you want to stay on the field. And I also love your talking about the seasons, because I'm blessed by God to have the career that I have and the people I get to consult at the levels that I get to consult at, $100 million companies, $1 billion companies. And to your point, they will all share the same exact story. And it's always mountaintops, hitting the top,
Exactly.
seeing the other peak, and forgetting they have to walk down the backside to start climbing the next one.
Come on.
And that's the part that got me for so long. And I never realized that I was creating this false expectation, similar earlier, as silly as it is, that just because I got the abs, I got to keep them, or just because I have the relationship and the friendship, it magically keeps itself, or just because I look this way and have this strength that I can just stop everything I'm doing and it's going to stick. And no, but there is and to your point, it's huge. There's also the law of diminishing returns. As the deeper and deeper you go, the harder you get to work.
Yeah.
And sometimes the longer it takes for the result to show up. And that's your faith and commitment to the process that builds character. So I love the way that you explain this, and you do it. It's so eloquent. I actually want to go all the way back when we were talking about you knowing yourself and knowing your strengths, because you said something that I think is valuable for everybody, where you were like, if you want to build a relationship, just like turn on the video and connect with people, right? And I'd say that God put me through many seasons of, not by choice, of me being good on video or doing podcasts. Like, I was never trained as a speaker. I never did it. It was like drenched in sweat. And now, 15 years later, I'm like, oh, I like love this. But I still struggle at times, where I'm in a season right now of moving out and getting my own place after a divorce. And I got called out yesterday. It's like, I miss you on your stories. And I was like, oh, I've been hiding and not creating that. And I think there's so many people that I run into that are like, they have so much to say and so much to offer, but there's this like invisible wall that gets in the way of them expressing their truth or being authentic or sharing. And this is something you not only help people do with video, but also just help people do. And is something that you've navigated through. And when you said, like, you're a beautiful person, you just have to show people, right? Like, the world doesn't benefit when we stay locked in our house, right? Like, we have to go out and engage. And so I would just love your thoughts on, for anybody who's feeling that way, whether it's, I'm afraid to make video, or I don't want to say this, or I have this opinion, but I don't want to share it, or here's this belief, but I haven't felt courageous enough to post it. Like, what is your advice for people who are navigating the same thing as you've walked through this before?
That's such a great question. I had so many answers that popped in my head. So I'm going to start here.
Give me all of them. Give me all of them.
So the first thing is that oftentimes when people are nervous to share, is because they think they're going to get backlash. They have a fear of judgment, or they just have a fear of being on camera. They don't like the way they look, right? So that's an insecurity. What if this happens? What if that happens, right? But that's us focusing on self. And if you started your business, you didn't start your business to focus on self. You started your business to make an impact. You started a business to transform lives, to change lives. And so when we stop focusing on self and start focusing on, who can I help today? Like, if we just ask that one question, who can I help today? I feel like there will be a huge shift, because it takes it off of what I look like, how I'm feeling, what's going to happen after, to, I'm actually just here to help you, right? And then my next thing is Jesus. I love using Jesus as a good example, because Jesus is God. And when he showed up on this earth, he walked, 100% man, 100% God. And he was telling people, I'm the way, I'm the truth, and the life. And every time he showed up, the Pharisees and the Sadducees made fun of him. They left bad comments. They were saying nasty things. They were trying to catch him in a trap. And Jesus could have been he could have said, you know what, forget it. I ain't dying for these suckers. I don't think so. I'm going back to heaven, because they don't know how to act. But he focused on mission. And so instead of us focusing on what if this bad happens? What if I get bad comments? What if someone contests me? How about we focus on the mission that God has us on? Like my mission is to transform lives. And how do I do that? I show people how to build wealth and how to multiply that wealth by using your personal brand. That's how I do it. I show you how to build relationships through content so that when people see you, they're seeing you as authority. They're seeing you as someone that I want to work with, but not just work with. I know that you have been called to change my business, change my life. That's how they see you. But if you don't show up, they're not going to see that. So for
Mm.
me, I stay focused on mission because I do. When I get to heaven, I already know God's going to be like, well done, good and faithful servant. That's the only comment that I really ever need. And so that's what I focus on mission, right? The next thing, I've definitely been tested and tried in this as well, right? I have gotten lots of bad comments. I've said things that don't resonate with people. I'm in a sorority, right? So I am a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I did not know that there are a lot of Christians that do not like sororities or fraternities. They think that it's a cult, they think that it's witchcraft and all that stuff. That has not been my experience. Actually, God led me to my sorority. So, but as soon as I became a member, one of my best friends turned on me. I mean, she turned on me. We were running a ministry together, teaching women Bible
Mm.
study. And as soon as I became a member of this illustrious organization, she started teaching the women against me. Started telling them that I was in a cult, I was doing witchcraft, I'm not following God, like all these things. And they were like calling me out. I was humiliated every time I showed up. But here's what happened. While I was going through that, well, actually, before I started going through it, God said to me, "You're under attack." Why would God tell me that if I joined something that He didn't want me to join? He said, "Your character's on attack." He kept telling me that. And I didn't believe him because I'm like, why would my best friend do that to me? And then he said to me, "I'm going to show you something." And I'm thinking, okay, what is he going to show me? And as I'm going through this attack, what he was showing me was this person wasn't for me. God had told me before she entered my life that she was a visitor in my life. And
Mm.
I went and elevated her as a lifetime partner. We're going to be best friends forever. We're going to do everything together. And I remember when God told me, yeah, her time is up in your life. And I'm over here like, but how are you going to do that, God? Because I love her. She's amazing, all that. And that year, she completely turned on me. And I was like, oh, had I left a year earlier, I wouldn't have gone through that. But right after that, I shot a video on my experience and how God led me to this sorority. Do you know that after I posted that video, the amount of people who wrote the nastiest things to me? And I remember crying to God every single day, they don't like me. Look what they're saying. Da, 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 da. And He allowed me to do that for 3 days straight. On day 4, He said, so I don't care. Get up and keep going. And I was like, you don't care? That changed my life. You don't care that they're saying all these things about me? He's like, no, keep going. He had sent me a dream that that video was going to go viral, right? It did. It went viral in my eyes for YouTube. Till this day, people are still commenting on it. But what I recognize, people are going to talk. They're going to leave bad comments. They're going to say nasty things that really has nothing to do with me and everything to do with them. And then for the
Mm.
people who do leave the bad comments, right, and say the nasty things, I always think about King David, where he was in a cave and Saul tried to kill him. And David had 2 opportunities to take this man out. And he could have been justified because you're trying to take my life, so let me take yours first. And the Holy Spirit convicted him and said, touch not my anointed. And
Mhm.
David ran with that. And it's very interesting to me how people can be so bold to always touch God's anointing through their comments with the nastiest things ever. And I think to myself, oh, they don't got no fear of God. But I do. I have a fear of God. So you go ahead and do what you do. But I'm going to keep
Mhm.
showing up focused on mission, focused on blessing God's people, because the only comment that really matters to me is well done, good and faithful servant.
Mm. That was such a good answer. Such a good answer. The way that you weave in biblical with business and life, and I'm like, I love you. And I'm over here. I'm like, all right, George, step your game up. And it reminds me. It reminds me too. I heard this quote years ago from a shaman of all people, but then I adjusted it, and it means a whole new thing to me right now. because the initial quote was, relationships happen for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Mhm.
And I never felt comfortable saying it. And a couple of years ago, I said, relationships happen for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And the choice isn't up to me. And from the biblical lens, I heard Philip Anthony Mitchell talking about this the other day, about the idolatry that we make about these positions in our life and these people and these seasons, to tie it all together. And the one answer that I want to add to what you shared that I think is so important, and something that I'm navigating right now, is that the willingness to be authentic and vulnerable comes down to having the confidence, but the confidence comes from knowing yourself,
Yes.
to your earlier point, and then knowing,
Mhm.
for me, my relationship with God and who I am through his eyes, because the rest of it is not for me, but it's to make sure that my heart remains soft and my heart remains true in the sharing of it. And, it's interesting because even on the entrepreneurial side, we can go find 100 stories that people will celebrate where first they'll laugh at you, then they'll judge you, then they'll hate you, then they'll love you, right? And we celebrate them all. And then we forget that when we're in that season, we're carving that path in our own vision and our own step, that, to your point, no one can come do it for us. But I've realized that the only time we lose is when we aren't authentically expressed, because that's a prison that we have the key to and we keep locking the door. And then that's where the rumination comes from. That's where the spiraling comes from. That's where the anxious nights comes from. And like, if I think back to my whole career, all the biggest challenging moments, even in my personal life, the sleepless nights, the panic attacks, the things that I struggled with, I can confidently say almost all of them came down to me not being 100% myself and being okay with it.
Yep.
There was some false barometer or measuring stick or what this is going to say or that's going to say. And all it did was cost me everything. It cost me moments with my son, cost me moments with my friends, cost me business and connections, because I was more afraid of the judgment and the perception of everybody else than I was to just be honest, which is, hey, I have bad days. I'm struggling. I'm struggling with divorce right now, and being a parent and being godly in the process and moving and closing chapters. And I'm allowed to struggle with all of those things and still be skilled in what I do and be a full human in the process.
Exactly. Mhm.
Which is the invitation for everybody as well. And so I love the way that you answer that question. It is so, so, so good. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. And I just want to echo what you said, like, life is going to life anyway. So keep on showing up. And then there's some people where they feel like, yeah, it's true. Then there's some people where they feel like, I'm a very private person, so I don't want to share those things, right? I'm a very private person. This is me, Star. I'm very private. And no one could ever tell. If you look at my social media, you would never guess that I'm a private person, because I'm so open with my audience. I'm so giving with my audience. We're not saying that you have to create a whole reality show and share everything in your life, right? Just share the parts, one that you feel authentic to share, and stop hiding behind educational content. I see people do that all the time. I'm just going to teach, 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 teach. That's not going to build relationship. It's just not. It'll build
Mm-mm.
authority. Like, think about it. Like, anyone here, your best friend is your teacher? When you were growing up, has your best friend ever been your teacher? No, it was always the person sitting next to you while the teacher was teaching, right? So you want to be able to leverage both and not hide behind it. Because I used to do it too. I used to hide behind educational content and until God told me, create to relate. He said, that's the piece that's missing. You need to create to relate. And I started to shifting to, how can I relate to these people? Because I'm called to them. And if Jesus never related to us, we wouldn't be here right now. And then I also started to understand, like, there's a connection that's happening in the spirit. He's connecting all of us, unity. And all we ever really desire is to be seen, to be heard, and to be in community. And if you can offer that through your content, the people will come. You don't have to worry about anything else. The people will come.
Oh, girl, the amount of one-liners that you drop in passing, and then you got to let them marinate. Okay. So like, take your brother George. I'm putting Coach George hat on right now. Like, just let them marinate for a minute, because you're dropping some like one-liners over here that I love. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to go back through this episode and pull them all out, because they are fire. And I love the note. I actually recorded a podcast on this today, a solo show that's coming out, because I was talking about stories, and extracting stories, but the customer stories. And it's not about how big it is or how small it is or how logical it is. It's about how relatable and realistic it is.
Mm-hmm.
And with that point, I want to make a point because you said it. And I think the struggle that I've seen and I struggled with forever until God put this on my heart is that I used to treat content like it was my therapist. And it took God a couple of seasons to teach me there's a big difference between intimacy and authenticity.
So good.
And intimacy is reserved for my friends like you, or my partner, or my son, or my best friend. And that's the difference between me saying, like, hey, here's this inner thought and what I'm struggling with and what I'm frustrated with and blank. That's intimacy, my deepest, darkest fears and desires. But authenticity is, hey, I'm in a season right now and I feel this way and I think this way. And I'm just being authentic. And the easiest example I can give to people, and this one always blows their mind, the amount of conferences or meetings we go to, right? Pleasantries. Like, let's say you and I are running a ministry together. One walks in, they're like, hey, good morning. I'm like, how's your morning? They're like, great. I'm like, liar. Right. And I'm like, it's completely okay to be like, I don't even know how I made it here today. There was so much traffic. I spilled my coffee on my shirt. I got into a fight with my partner, but I'm choosing to be here. That's authenticity. And I think in 2025, because all I do is coach clients one-on-one, there's only one quote unquote tactic that's actually working right now. And do you know what it is? Authenticity, because everybody has been burnt out and tricked and snake in the grass to where, to your point, relationships are a two-way street, but somebody has to lead it to create the field or the dance floor for somebody else to feel safe enough to step on. And I love the way that you said it is our job is to create, to relate. You build authority through education and you build relationships through relating. And so the way that you said it was just like spot on, but I wanted to add the note about intimacy and authenticity. And just to own this for everybody, the real reason this happened is because I'm very open about the fact that I was abused in my life. But I was sharing it publicly on giant podcasts with millions of people before I had ever fully healed. And so instead of saying I was sexually abused, I would share explicit details that would actually create trauma or triggers in other people. And there was this like trauma bonding that was happening with me too, because it was keeping me stuck. And so the reason that definition hit me was because I went through that, and I got email after email with no ill intent, but someone's like, hey man, like you might want to, and I was like, oh. And so that's the difference between intimacy and authenticity for me, which I thought would resonate.
That definitely resonated. And I love that you brought that up. And I also want to point out, but notice that even in you not knowing that, you still were sharing. And so sometimes people get stuck in over analysis. We call it analysis paralysis, where it's like, what do I share? How do I share? And it's like, if you just start walking it out, God will always send people to redirect you and show you to do this and show you to do that. And I love that he did that. And you just modeled that so perfectly.
And I think that that's the big, and just for anybody listening to this, and I think this might serve a few people, which is why I'm sharing it. I'd never felt free in my life until this one moment. So a lot of people know, or you know now, that I was a New York Times bestselling cookbook author. I was a paleo food blogger and I taught people health. I was actively bulimic the whole time because my philosophy was it was easier to hide in plain sight because nobody would question me. And I was about to give a keynote in Austin, Texas to all my peers, my publisher, my co-authors, and to my ex-wife's credit, I had this talk called The 3 Ways to Use Food to Create Breakthrough Results in Your Life. I remember it like it was yesterday. And this was 11 years ago. And I was like, well, you eat 3 times a day so you can practice habits and habit stacking. And like, it's, boom, boom, boom. You're not in a monogamous relationship with food. There's no cheating, only choices. Like I remember the talk from 11 years ago, which is how visceral this is. And I was about to walk on stage and she looked at me and she said, are you really going to go up there and lie again? And like full credit, full 100% credit. And instantly my body broke out in sweat. I had this blue collared shirt on. Now I live in hoodies and shorts, but I had this blue collared shirt on and I'm standing on the side of the stage. And by the time I got up there, it was purple. And I mean, I was drenched and I had no words. This was God, 100%.
Mm.
I literally could not speak. And I have 1,000 people staring at me. My slides are on the screen behind me. And the only thing that came out of my mouth was a freaking Catholic confessional. And I just started dumping. I'm like, I've been lying to all of you. I purged this morning. This is why I do this. This is why it happened. This is why I blanked. And I blacked out. I went for 3 minutes, no idea. And I just felt empty, but the room disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
There was nobody else in that room. And I was just standing on stage. And I remember the feeling viscerally. I felt like I was flying because I felt like I took 1,000 pounds of weight off that I'd been holding my whole life. And the craziest thing happened, to your point earlier. I thought in those moments leading up, everyone was going to fire me. I was going to lose my book. I was going to lose my business. I was going to lose all of this. And I finished Star, and the only thing I could do was stand there in silence. I did not know what to do. People that were standing up sat down, and I stood there, and it was probably only like 30 seconds, felt like 45 minutes of silence.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never forget this. Somebody I didn't know from the audience yelled out in my silence because I just didn't know what to do. And they're like, "Thank you for sharing. Are you going to give us your talk now?" And it was like my entire life of fears dissipated in that moment. And I never forgot that feeling. And to your point of like, stop analyzing and just show up.
Yes.
Just show up. Like the only time we lose is when we don't pick the pen up and put it down on paper. In this lens, it's just showing up in whatever that story is in that moment to share it. And you just go and go and go and go, and then you refine it and you get better at it. But I don't think I've shared that fully. And that was the moment that did it for me.
Oh, that's so good. I can see you on that stage, and I can even see when you blacked out and you didn't see the room anymore. And you're such a great storyteller. I know you already know that. But again, that's how we relate. When people are
Mm-hmm.
hearing these stories, and imagine if you never went through that, right? I mean, you were still successful, but how much more now that you get to bless people because you had a journey, right? And this is why we don't despise the trials that we go through, because it really does help us with the stories that we're telling to be able to relate. Because there's no one in this world who has never gone through anything. That maybe a
1,000%.
baby, and maybe even they went through a lot. So it's just so important to, when you're creating, just relate to your people. Who are these people? What are they struggling with? How can I help them today? And sometimes helping them is just letting them know, hey, I've been there too.
Yes. Oh, girl, I could genuinely podcast with you for like 6 hours and every day. I feel like I get ministered to, I get prayed over, I get preached into. We speak the same language, we see business the same. I was like, no, girl, I love you, like genuinely. And I wanna land this. We're gonna have to do another one and another one, and you know the whole
Yeah, yeah.
game. You know the whole game. But before I do that, I want you to share with everybody where they can connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually on YouTube now, and you can just go to Book of Star. Yeah, that was part of the other strategy. God moved me from Instagram and TikTok to YouTube. So you can just follow me at Book of Star and subscribe there. That's where I'm doing a lot more longer form content, Bible marketing secrets to really help you to scale your business and get to the next level of where you want to be. And then I also have a challenge called Convert Content to Cash. You can go to contenttocashchallenge.com. But if you want to learn how to create content that sells in 5 days or less, you can feel free to head there. Our next challenge is kicking off on June 2nd. And our goal really is to show you how you can create connections with your audience through your videos, right? How you can create the content that's going to help them to feel seen and heard so that they actually want to work with you. And then show you how you can be the authority on your platform. Because let's face it, when we talk about authority from the worldly sense, it's just like this is the expert. But from the spiritual sense, the Christian sense, where God wants us, this is actually your territory. So I just showed you
Mm.
how no matter what platform you're on, this is your territory. And this is where God wants you to be the king or queen so that you can be able to serve his people. And let me just say, serve people and be able to help. So that's what we show you inside the Convert Content to Cash Challenge.
And listen, everybody, I will have all the links in the show notes. I don't care if you're a service provider. I don't care if you're a physical products person. I don't care if you're a coach. I don't care if anything. And I don't do this. I 100% like force you to go do this with her because it will only help. And her and I will always support each other, but supporting you. And I could not teach it. nor do it the way that she does. And so like go, 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 go. And by the way, I just subscribed. That's what I was doing on my phone. I own it all day. I opened my phone. I'm like, I'm not going to forget. I'm subscribing right now because I didn't know you launched the YouTube channel, which makes me so happy. So final question.
Mhm.
And I just always love to ask, but it's really just imparting words of wisdom. If you just imagine that, you know, for the last hour and 9 minutes, everybody forgot everything we shared. We Men in Black them and it went blank. But whatever you share with them in this moment, you're going to tattoo on their soul and they're going to take it with them forever. What would your tattoo wisdom be?
Be true to yourself and do what it is that you're calling yourself to do. Because what you're telling yourself to do is actually the plan that God has for you. If you keep ignoring it, you won't be at peace.
That. The end. We end here. We gravy. Shamara, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a mentor. Thank you for being just a woman on fire for God and for living with values and integrity and doing business the way that makes a lasting impact for everybody. Like it's an honor and a pleasure every single time.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I just love your podcast. I love how you serve your people. Like, you know, I'm always here to support you.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, don't let this episode become shelf help because I know something landed. Something, right? Like of the 187 gems that she dropped, one of them landed. So let today be the day that you act on that. And remember, acting on it is sowing it and consistently sowing it through the seasons until it creates the harvest, but don't stop sowing it. So whatever that is today, grab it. And if she can support you, please reach out, send her thanks, gratitude, go leave a comment on our YouTube channel. Let's get this thing pumping and going. I'm going to go watch some videos later. I'm flying tomorrow. So like I got new content to watch on my flights tomorrow. So thank you. And for everybody listening, this has been another episode of the Mind of George show. So you will either see me in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, remember that relationships will always beat algorithms, especially the one with yourself, as she said. And then secondly, you're one with God. And so God bless and have a beautiful day.